Hello and welcome to this professional development webinar brought to you by a joint collaboration between the e-commerce club and the Fashion Network, whom I represent. And the title of this webinar, as is on your screen, is Online Customer Journey Masterclass from Discovery to Delivery. So we have a pretty good panel of experts here for you today, and we want to basically have an open discussion about best practice with regards to when customers find and discover your business and or product, and when it arrives on their door. So like I say, it's an open discussion. We welcome your input as well for all of you guys out there listening. Just a few things to note before we begin though. If you do have any questions or any comments, then please leave them in the chat box. We want to keep this discussion as interactive as possible. Do get involved. We find that's much better learning experience in the past if you guys out there are chipping in as well. Alternatively, if you're a little bit like me and you prefer to speak rather than talk, there is a raise your hand feature which will allow you to, allow us to switch your audio feed on and you'll be able to speak to us directly. This session is being recorded and will be on YouTube at a later date in case you want to listen in again, or perhaps you'd like to share it with your colleagues. So that's something to note. We're gonna talk for about an hour. Like I say, we will do our best to answer as many questions as comments as possible, but forgive us if we don't get to it. And then immediately after this session, we will be hosting a post-webinar virtual networking session, only for about 15 to 20 minutes. But you as audience members are more than welcome to join us in that. It'll just be a standard Zoom meeting. It won't be a webinar format. So you're more than welcome to come and have a quick chit chat with us and see if there's any questions that perhaps you haven't answered or anything like that. So we'll be there for 15, 20 minutes afterwards, having a quick debrief. What would be really useful though for all of us is if you out there listening now, if you could just pop, the chat box should be going live any second. There it is. If you can just let us know where you are in the world and let us know what you do. So just let us know in the chat box where you are in the world and let us know what you do. It's always useful for myself, and I'm sure it'll be useful for our panelists to have an idea of who we are talking to and talking with today. Anyway, so that's it. So my name is Dale Hicks and I am the co-founder and director here at the Fashion Network, and I will be chairing today's session. We just want to do a quick plug at the beginning for our sponsors. So we have a couple of sponsors here, and obviously in order for us to do these sessions for free, we do rely on sponsors. So we have to give them a quick shout, and we give a quick plug to Pimberly, and Pimberly's specialist product information management services, and also asset management. So if you are in the market for product information management, or as it's better known as PIM, then I'm sure they would be delighted to hear from you. So that's Pimberly, and also co-sponsor today is CTI Digital, and CTI Digital sort of come from a e-commerce development background. So they do CMS websites, e-commerce websites. They offer hosting and various other different support like that, as well as sort of creative design and UX. And all of that within the sort of overall digital, they're a bit of a digital strategy team that they have there, so it's not just about development. So there are two sponsors today. I'd also like to give a bit of a shout out to MOSQUITO, and although they're not sponsoring it, they've kindly put forward one of their speakers. And they offer sort of digital branding, more of a digital creative branding communication agency. So there you go, as the quick plug for the beginning. So like I say, if you're in the market for PIM, product information management services, or sort of e-commerce development, then I'm sure our partners will be delighted to hear from you. If you didn't get their contact details, don't worry about it, because you can either contact the e-commerce club or the Fashion Network, and we'll be more than happy to introduce you to them. Before we begin though, I would like to introduce our speakers, and we've got three speakers today, and we have Michael Ashworth. So he's e-commerce director at CTI Digital. Now Mike is an experienced e-commerce professional with a background in design and multimedia. He has over 17 years experience running his own e-commerce agency before selling it. But while Mike is not consulting on website, Mike likes to get as far away from the internet, man after my own heart there, and is often underneath the water with his scuba gear on. So that's Michael. Alongside Michael, we have Nikki Ratcliffe, and Nikki is a marketing professional at Pimberly, and as Vice President Marketing for Pimberly, Nikki has built the Pimberly brand from the ground up. She is responsible for go-to marketing strategies and driving demand. She's previously led the e-commerce function for Apple's largest reseller in the UK. And Nikki, I didn't realize this, you've got a degree in French and Russian from Northumbria University.
I don't think I'll be using that today.
It's all right, I won't break out into franglais, so don't worry about that. At the weekends, though, Nikki is an avid runner, and she runs with a local running club, and her perfect distance is 10K. And especially if there is a country pub waiting at the end of it. Ooh, I like the sound of that. Maybe not so much the 10K, but I do like the sound of the maybe a 5K, and I'll meet you in the pub perhaps. And then we've got Agne, who's head of performance marketing at MOSQUITO Digital. Now, Agne has over 9 years experience within the digital marketing, the digital marketing remit, and has recently been awarded in Performance Marketing Rule 30 Under 30. Congratulations to you, Agne. And outside work, I believe Agne is an avid explorer, so she's never too far away from her suitcase and loves to travel. So that's our speakers. And before we get into the discussion, we have a poll that we're about to publish. And we want to hear from you, the audience. So if you can just answer the poll, is basically, what are your consumers' biggest frustrations with the buying journey? So if you can just let us know what sort of feedback you're getting from your consumers and that, and we'll launch that poll shortly. I'm just going to have a quick nosy in the chat box to see who we've got here today. So we've got Abigail here from Liverpool. We've got Jenna from Johannesburg. Meghna from India. I believe you're on our session yesterday as well. Mahum from Manchester. Hi, Mahum. And we've got Rebecca from Leicester. So a lot of UK people. Another person from Johannesburg here, Nosy. So we've got a bit of a broad array of people from all over the world. Oh, we've got one here from Latvia as well, Una. I hope you enjoy the session. So hopefully the poll's about to be launched. So there you go. So out of all the gripes and grinds, the one that's coming out there seems to be that product not as described is the main reason. Sort of, well, it's a tie really between stock not available and product not described and return policies. They're sort of the three out and out reasons. Michael, can I just come to you quickly? Does that come as a surprise to you or not? Or does that seem about normal or?
That seems about right, to be honest. I mean, we tend to see the major frustrations being around checkout. So whether that's at checkout or kind of post checkout. So that kind of rings true really with problems with shipping, problems with returns, problems with payment. A bit surprised to see product not as described being so high up, and that obviously is a key issue, and it's something that the merchants need to get right. But for that to come out top's a bit of a surprise. But yeah, I think that feels probably about right in terms of what we hear as a business.
Well, if you have any gripes that we haven't listed there, guys listening in, so just pop them in the chat box. And also to all our panelists, keep an eye on the chat box, because you'll get a few comments and bits and bobs in. And if just to say to our audience as well, we'll do our best to answer and respond to as many comments and questions, but please forgive us if we don't. Nikki, I'm going to come to you with our first question then. And obviously this is a bit of a top level question to ask, but I think it's always good to start these conversations like this. But why is it imperative to have a smooth customer journey? I know it might sound to a few people it's quite a basic question, but do you want to just set the scene with that first, please?
Yeah, no, of course, Dale, and it does. It sets the scene for the session here today, doesn't it? And I guess really the key point is that it's about more than just good customer service. As we all know, there'll be several touch points on the buyer journey before they even convert, or the point of converting from browser to buyer, and that will be from the initial search right through to checkout and beyond. And at each of these stages, the e-com professionals that we have kind of with us today will have KPIs that they're looking to achieve in order to drive those online sales, be that around the PP campaign, performance, online conversion, average order value, because what we all want is to deliver those memorable online experiences that keep our customers engaged throughout. And if we do that, then that will have a positive impact on our KPIs and consequently our increased sales. And as we know, this also aligns to ensuring that we have that consistent omni-channel experience. And so, yeah, so that's kind of, I guess, the kind of starting point there. And we've, at Pimberly, we actually did a survey asking consumers what they saw as being kind of an awesome online experience, and that's that we can share with attendees following this session.
Is there anything in the survey what's not a good customer's experience at all, or is it just mainly on the?
A lot of it. What I think we're probably going to touch today when we've had some kind of earlier sessions. So yeah, you know, interestingly, and it's not just because we're coming at it from Pimberly's perspective, but we had checkout and also product data as well as being what would be perceived as not to be. But yeah, some interesting insight there that we can share.
Michael, I'm looking over to you. Just tell us, where does this journey begin then, from your point of view? Where do you think it starts?
Good question. I think before we go into that, it's probably worth just explaining what the full journey is, and I think there's sort of five sort of classic stages really of that purchase journey, that e-commerce journey. It starts with awareness. And then consideration, decision, retention, and advocacy. Those are kind of the 5 steps of a consumer. Obviously, for all brands, they're trying to get to advocacy. They want the customer to purchase. They want them to be a brand ambassador and to ultimately promote the product, promote the brand, etc. Going forwards. But it all starts in that awareness phase, and really that's when the consumer comes to have a need for something, and that can come from many places. So there's obviously a good example recently with the hot weather. There would have been a big need suddenly for sun cream, for t-shirt, for barbecue products, whatever it might be, and the consumer suddenly becomes aware that there is something they want to purchase. And really from that stage, that can then lead down many different avenues. Some people might go to search, and that might be the first place they go to look at that product. They might look for recommendations from a friend, but really that kind of need for a product is that first buying point, or that kind of first step within that buying journey.
So you very much view this even before search, because I actually expected you to say the journey starts at search here, but you're really, I suppose you're actually looking at this from a marketing perspective in many respects. So you're saying, sorry, go on.
Well, yeah, like I say, that awareness phase can start from whatever. It might be a personal need. You might have a wedding at the weekend and need a suit, and you suddenly think, I have to buy this product. So that journey can start in many different ways. It might be advertising, so it might be something you didn't know you wanted, and you just in an advert and think, I really want one of those. But I think it's often something that comes to a consumer rather than a consumer going to look for something to purchase. I don't think that many people go, I want to buy something today, but I don't know what it is, and start searching for something. People tend to have some sort of need or some sort of desire for a product, which then leads them on that journey to discover what that product might be and to ultimately purchase that product through a retailer.
Agne, I want to bring you in on this stage as well. So, I mean, do you agree with what Michael's saying there? Do you think it starts at the awareness stage, and is search the only funnel in to the journey, or would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think, of course, it's very common for it to kind of start from the need perspective, but I think it's very dependent of the industry that you operate in. So if we're taking fashion as an example, a lot of the content and where people usually get brought in is kind of from the emotional and kind of aspiration element rather than a specific need, because I'm sure a lot of us have shopped from Fashion Remit out of, I don't know, an urge for a holiday or just wanting to keep up with certain trends. So it's very much a different angle that you can approach as well, and kind of making sure that you have the right personas mapped within your kind of product elements as well. So if there are certain kind of need-based products or products that you kind of want to promote more from a lifestyle perspective, that's how you can kind of plot those personas against kind of the marketing strategy and how you want to approach this first awareness stage, because you do have to start with the awareness kind of stage within this. I did see someone come in with a question around market
Aaron,
research.
isn't it? Yeah.
So
do you want to just read that out so everyone can?
Yeah, sure.
Do you want to do it, or shall I?
No, go on.
Just read it, because some people might not be able to see that. So how do you approach market research to identify customer awareness opportunities?
So a lot of the kind of places that you would go to search for these would be around search volumes, because they do usually tend to kind of indicate the demand within specific industries. So you would kind of look at tools like Google Trends. There's SEMrush, which is predominantly an SEO tool. However, it's very good for keyword research and kind of suggest similar topics or similar products that people are searching for. You can, there's quite a few different places. Obviously, Google Ads, if you do run any advertising, it also has a keyword planner with kind of suggested filters and facets in terms of maybe people have a trend for white dresses currently. They'll be able to point out those opportunities for you within these tools.
Thank you. And I'm not inferring that you might suggest that fashion isn't always needed by your previous answer there, but I understand. I think I understand where you're going with that. It's, you know, I suppose it starts with the demand, I guess, is what both you and Michael are sort of saying. And Nikki, do you want to add to that at all? I see you nodding a little bit there.
I certainly agree with that in terms of it starting with demand. I guess my kind of point would be just around kind of the SEO side of things in terms of ensuring that the kind of the keywords that you are considering are fit for purpose based on what stage your buyer's potentially at, and you've got your kind of website optimized certainly around your product data to kind of facilitate that. And also bear in mind that, I know the number fluctuates depending on what survey you read, but fewer are using that standard search engine. The last I read it was 35%. So you also need to consider kind of your marketplace in terms of where that buyer journey has started, in-app, social media. So to ensure that you have that your product copy and content is fit for purpose and can capture the audience that you want to capture on these various channels at that first stage of the buyer journey.
Okay, but it's not all about search. No, there are other routes in here. Obviously, SEO is a huge thing. Obviously, Agne just sort of alluded to, there are obviously marketing campaigns that drive traffic that way. Is there any other sort of doors in that we've missed here at all? Search, marketing campaigns. Is there anything else we've missed out before we?
In app, like I said, and social media as well. Yeah.
I think we see a lot of activity on marketplaces as well. So a lot of people might actually bypass search and just go straight to Amazon or eBay and look for a product. I mean, for myself personally, I'm a bit of a chronic researcher. So when I decide I want to buy something, I want to read reviews, I want to see customer reviews, and I'll spend quite a bit of time considering that purchase. Whereas my girlfriend will go from need to buying it on Amazon Marketplace within about 3 minutes, and there's not much of a journey there, to be honest. So I think different people approach it in different ways. And probably depending a bit on the price of the product and things like that. Obviously, a more expensive product might be more considered, and they might start at search and really spend a lot of time in that discovery phase. Whereas something that's maybe a bit cheaper or a bit more of a commodity is something people will just go and buy on eBay or just find the best price for that product if they're really clear on what they want.
Okay, so we've got the need stage. We've got however people have gone into this journey, they've gone through either the search or the email or whatever funnel they've gone into, and now they're at the product page. Nikki, tell us a little bit about the importance of the product page now they're at that stage. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, so again, I don't want to teach the audience to suck eggs here, but you
can teach me to suck eggs because I know nothing of it.
But it's the e-com equivalent to your shop window. It's key. It's at the point where you're hoping that your browsers are going to convert to kind of buyers. So it's absolutely crucial. You're assuming, as we all do, because we're all consumers ourselves, that potentially they've got multiple tabs open at the time of viewing your kind of product detail page, so that again, what you have there is absolutely paramount to ensure that it's providing the right level of product information. It's giving your prospective buyer confidence enough in order for them to kind of click and add to basket. And you also want to get them kind of excited if you can as well, so that there's a brand experience as well as kind of trust there. And I guess what I just wanted to kind of add there really in terms of that product detail page is that it's about your product copy, but it's about so much more than that. So for example, your digital assets, giving your customers the ability to kind of zoom in and have various 3D 360 degree kind of views, and we know from surveys we've carried out that having such functionality can generate kind of conversion rates that are significantly higher, as much as 40% higher than those without. And making sure that, again, on your product detail page, that your product descriptions address any potential questions your customers may want to have. So we know that, you know, increasingly, particularly within fashion, consumers want to understand the environmental impact of their purchases, be that where the material was sourced, you know, what the recyclable information is. And video, again, as we know, is increasingly popular as well. In the survey that I referred to at the beginning of our session today, 59% of those that responded stated that they wanted to see video content as at that stage of the kind of buyer journey. So in summary, it's the product detail page is the opportunity to make your product shine and convert your browsers to buyers.
I've read that somewhere else as well, Nikki, of the importance of video. I think it's stuttered a little bit with not a lot of fashion, but some aspects of the fashion industry. I think it's quite high. You know, obviously the cost of producing good quality video assets, especially when it comes to fashion, can be a bit prohibitive, obviously. But I think it's slowly coming into our sector now.
Yeah, and you've got the Google aspect there as well, haven't you, from an SEO perspective? Which
yes.
Yeah.
I think just to add to that as well, because like Nikki says, there's the kind of basics again of our product information right and the images right, etc. But really, especially online, the role of a product page is to try and get as close to a product experience as you can, not just product information. Obviously, you're competing with physical stores where you can go in, you can feel a product, you can see it. So to give as much information around the product as you can to get as close to that as possible, I think is really important. And don't, you know, try not to leave the customer with any questions unanswered when they're on that page. And I think that's quite a key consideration for how you approach that.
I have to concur with you, Michael. I'm a little bit like you, actually. I'm a bit of a serial researcher. I spend a lot of time just researching. Funny enough, I was just researching a holiday before. I was working. I was on my lunch breaks recently. I was just researching a holiday, and I was getting really frustrated because it was just, there wasn't enough information on there for me to make my decision, you know. And I suppose that's kind of doing this session has clarified that that's what it was really. It's just not giving you that experience. I suppose there are positives and negatives to the in-store experience and the online experience as well, aren't there? I mean, you don't feel that pressure to buy, do you, when you're reading through and comparing products and all that sort of stuff. Is there anything else on that product stage, not just Nikki, but anybody else? Agne, do you want to come in? Is there anything else you'd like to see on that product page?
Yeah, I think social proof is a massive thing. So utilizing reviews and UGC content to really solidify that kind of trust, especially if it's a new brand that a user has never converted from or purchased from before. I think that's really important, and it's kind of key to make sure that's optimized and high enough on the page based on common scrolls and kind of, optimizing that kind of social proof experience and adding UGC content. If you have Instagram feeds, integrating those into your product pages as well, it really helps to kind of bring the human element of the brand, which is what you kind of want to do, especially to encourage those repeat purchases too.
So that moves neatly on actually to my next question then, which is, how do you then optimize the site? Obviously, you know, the product page is one thing, but then how do you, I'm going to come to you, Michael, on this, if that's okay. How do you optimize your website for the buying journey? And is this a design, function, or is it more than just the design?
I think it's more than just the design, and I would suggest it's not actually one journey, although it is, when put together, one journey. It's actually 5 different steps, and I think in terms of it can be a bit overwhelming if you try and optimize this full thing end to end. So what I would suggest is breaking that down into those 5 steps. So like I say, you've got awareness, you've got discovery, where within awareness you're really looking at your marketing, your digital marketing, your social, optimizing that bit of it. How do you get people aware of your brand within that marketplace? When you're looking at discovery, it's looking at your content, so blog articles, have you got lookbooks, have you got these things on your website that help people understand the product, understand how to buy that product. Maybe it might be something that you need to educate the customer about, etc. And then when you get to that decision stage, we're then looking at conversion. So going back to what Nikki said, making sure your product information is spot on, so people have the information to make that buying decision, making sure you have good shipping options, good payment options, all those kind of basic e-commerce things. And then once they've purchased it, you're into that retention stage, and really that's then looking at optimizing your aftercare, your support, your returns, etc. And then that final stage is that advocacy stage. So how do you get that customer to be a brand ambassador? And that might be things like loyalty schemes, it might be things like promotions for leaving reviews and that kind of thing. So it's really worth breaking that journey into those 5 different steps, looking at each step and then looking at what you're doing to address that specific part of that journey is how I would always advise a customer to approach that.
You haven't got that in notes anywhere to hand to you, Michael. I was going to say, I was just thinking I'll write it up and pop it into chat. If you do, pop it into chat. If you don't worry about it. We can always share it afterwards.
I can find it. Yeah, give me 1 minute.
Yeah. No, there's no pressure. We can do it afterwards. We can share it with the audience. We can send it out to the audience. But that does make good sense to me. You know, obviously those 5 stages. I suppose any question. This is a bit of a wildcard question. It's not what we discussed earlier, but obviously Davina and I run a lot of these sessions. You know, and some of them are obviously my audience is predominantly fashion and fast-moving consumables, and obviously we run talks towards the product team, we run talks for marketing teams, and we run talks for obviously e-com teams. But how important is it to try and, obviously there's marketing functions here, there's CRM functions here, there's, you know, merchandise. How important is it to get all those guys around the same table? And in your experience with your clients, does this happen, or are they still very much working in silos? Do you know what I'm saying there, Agne?
I think it's very important for the teams to work together. I think even the CRM teams that a lot of the times work separately, product data and user data is becoming gold dust from marketing perspective, with the cookieless future coming, which I'm sure everyone is aware of. So it's very important to kind of think how we're future proofing the businesses, so we actually get the opt-in and start using the user data efficiently for email campaigns, for kind of building those custom audiences on the media platforms, and kind of things working together. And there's a lot of kind of, I think, website optimizations that from marketing perspective, we work a lot with the website development team as well, because I think things like quizzes and finders, for example, for kind of gifting aspects, that's very much increasing our conversion rates and average order values, whilst also benefiting from kind of website experience and kind of narrowing that user journey. So it all works kind of very closely together.
Yeah, we've seen it in the past when funny enough, we did a session last week called The Death of the Cookie. Unfortunately, it was a live session. We didn't record it, but that was a lot of this was discussed there. But we did a session a few years ago where there was the marketing team was, I think that one of the companies was saying that their marketing team looked after the social, but social were getting a lot of the CRM requirements, but they weren't passing on to the CRM team. So they're getting loads of irate customers saying, where's my product? And obviously the marketing team is just, you know, their focus is putting out good content assets. So it's quite interesting, you know, to see that some of these teams work together, some of them don't. We've just got a question in chat here, actually, and maybe it's one for Nikki, I'm not sure, but from Caroline, how would you suggest providing best product information for quality projects? For example, we provide super soft PJs with lovely hand feel, but it's difficult to portray this on the e-commerce platform.
Okay, maybe you need to pin, Caroline. But yeah, I think it depends on what the question's based upon, whether it's based upon what product information should you be considering in terms of what you should be providing to your customers, or how do you do it on your e-commerce kind of platform. So I'll assume it's the former, and if it's the latter, maybe that's a conversation we can take kind of offline. But again, it's just thinking outside of that core product information as to what else your consumers may be interested in looking for, whether or not that is kind of what the pajamas are made of, what the kind of the washing instructions are, you know, what your marketing copy is going to be like in terms of whether or not you're looking for luxurious or cozy, you know, after a big night out, and ensuring that, you know, your product, your digital assets, your product imagery is kind of fit for purpose, and that you are considering different dynamics, be that kind of the demographics that you're going for, and ensuring that the product is as close to being as described as possible, again in terms of those digital assets, using kind of the imagery and video and whatever else that you can. So it's trying to make that product information as accurate and as rich as it possibly can be, considering what your potential consumers would be looking for from that. So yeah, would be what I'd say.
There's obviously visual assets as well.
Visual assets is absolutely crucial in terms of those digital assets.
There's another question actually before we move on then, but from Angie. What are your thoughts on virtual fit rooms? Anybody want to pick that up?
I've never tried one, so I think I'm going to leave that to someone else.
I've tried a couple that I've seen a couple done quite well, and I've seen a couple done particularly badly. I think it feels it's going to be something I think is going to be quite popular, obviously, on fashion stores. It's still, for me, feels a little bit immature, maybe, as a technology at the moment. There's some quite clunky implementations of it, but yeah, I think it's certainly something that's growing and will no doubt be in demand as part of, again, going back to that last question, how people look to really get across as much information as possible about how that product and how that fashion item is going to look.
There is so much, we get so much virtual fit room software providers sending us stuff. It's a real job to know what's what, where's, I mean, I've never considered myself as particularly an early adapter, so I tend to stand off a little bit and then wait for someone else to make a mistake, and then I'll start ranting about this one being the best there is. But yeah, I've seen no insights on that. Okay, so we've done just going through your stages again. So we've done the awareness stage, we've done the discovery stage, we're at the decision stage. Obviously then, when you've decided, then you want to go and buy that stuff, and you go through the checkout stage. Now, I'd like to come to you, Agne, on this. Just tell us a little bit about some of the checkout frustrations, if you like.
I think there are quite a few common ones that I'm sure many people have experienced themselves. I think too many steps within a checkout journey is probably a big one, especially if there's no indication on how long this will take. It just seems like an endless journey. And I think especially if you couple that with slow loading speeds, it's just the end, because you're gonna get a big drop off in terms of checkout at this point. So yeah, loading speeds is also a very common issue. It's also important to, I think, monitor that quite closely, because we have seen big variations with some e-commerce websites day to day even, and there's a lot of different things that can cause that, third party being one of them, if you have different scripts on there. So I think that's a big one to keep your eye on. Upselling too aggressively at the checkout stage can also be kind of a deterrent, especially if it's not done well. I think when it's done subtly in terms of upselling, if it's done well, then works. However, if it's too aggressive and takes up too much room and kind of acts as a barrier in the checkout journey, I think that can be a big one. And not having credit options, obviously with the last couple of years, especially, I think there's nearly an expectation of something like Klarna being available, especially for those kind of high value average orders. So I think that could be a big potential kind of option, especially during pre-payday periods when obviously the funds are running a little low. That's definitely a big opportunity if you're not currently utilizing that. And yeah, I'll let Michael maybe elaborate a bit more on that, because that's his area.
No pressure. Yeah, so I mean, I think Agne sums up really. Speed's really important. Speed of completion is really important. So look at things that you're asking the users to do at checkout. And what we do see, we don't see as much of it these days as we used to, but we do see retailers sometimes wanting to customize the checkout, add additional things to the checkout, and get users to do additional things in the checkout. You need to think really carefully about that, because really for a checkout experience, what you should be trying to do is remove friction, not add it. So we would always say remove navigations, remove any other calls to action that aren't buying this product. So don't try and get them to sign up to some separate scheme or join some club or anything like that. Really what you want them to do primarily is buy the product that they've added to their basket. So remove that friction and keep that speed as quick as possible. One thing I'm seeing a bit of a trend in at the moment is a lot of these sort of charity type apps where you can round up or you can offset your order for carbon setting the things. Again, those things are great, but just think very carefully about where they come in that journey, because what you don't want to do is make this some really long passport application type form that's going to take a user forever to fill in. So just be really considered, I think, in terms of what you put in the checkout and what you change in the checkout. Less is best, basically. I would say so, yeah. And then, like Agne says, just loads of options. So make sure there's lots of shipping options, lots of payment options. Some people will only want to pay with PayPal, or will only want to buy with Klarna or whatever. So just give as many of those as you can realistically give. Funny enough, we have done a checkout optimization masterclass. I can't remember it was now, but it is actually on our YouTube channel if anyone wants to catch it. I think a few of the frustrations there was having to sign in. The other one was cost not being what it was when
wasn't made clear at the end. And speed was another thing I never thought. Nikki, you're nodding. There's any frustrations you want to add to that, either professionally or personally?
Yeah, all of the above I think is really, really valid. And interestingly, around the kind of delivery side of things, in the survey that we carried out, 40% of respondents said that they'd go elsewhere if either the delivery details weren't provided in advance enough, or they weren't the right delivery details. So that kind of just reinforces the kind of importance of that, doesn't it? And equally around the loading pages, it's something that, again, it feels so simple, doesn't it? But is so crucial, particularly if your buyers are on a mobile device of some kind. The only thing I'd add to that is, again, around speed, is around not having the option to check out as a guest. So, you know, we're becoming more conscious, aren't we, of where our data is stored. And sometimes we just literally want to go on by and go and not fill out a lengthy form kind of in order to do that. So that's the only other thing I'd add. Yeah,
and maybe as the chair, if I can personally add my personal frustration, for what it's worth, I think the options to pay, I changed sites the other day because they've given me the opportunity to use PayPal. And they were trying to send me down the other route. I was like, oh, I just didn't have the time for that. And that was a real big frustration for me, really. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's a shame we can't be on everyone's computer watching the full reasons. We won't go down that thought. Okay, so we're at the checkout stage, and obviously there's quite a few frustrations there. Does the purchase end at the checkout stage? Now, Nikki, I'm going to come back to you on this.
Again, we know the answer to this, don't we? So no, not if you want to kind of encourage repeat purchases and you're interested in what your customer lifetime value is. And let's face it, it's far more cost effective to retain a customer than it is to go out and obtain kind of someone from new. And also in terms of kind of reducing returns as well. So that's a key element that I think we're going to talk about shortly. Importance of comms, really, really important. So help your buyer to kind of feel happy and warm and fluffy about the purchase. And again, I'm going to just keep repeating myself here, but, you know, ensuring that your product data, your product information is as it was described, in order to reduce kind of returns. That ties in there as well. And also post purchase, you do still have an opportunity to cross-sell and upsell, particularly when they've, you know, recently bought something and they're thinking, actually, should I have bought the necklace to go with that top or handbag or what have you? So there's still a buying mode there in terms of where they're at. And then, you know, finally, also that customer data that you'll have collected from the purchase, be it what was purchased, but also if you've got the tech to view what are the other products they viewed, that can enable you to customize your post-purchase comms. So again, all of that kind of hopefully will result in repeat purchases and an increased customer lifetime value, which is a win-win.
Okay. Well, it's just over the halfway point now, so I was just about to ask if you guys got any questions in the audience. You can either pop them in the chat box, we just got one come through now, or you can raise your hand and we can switch your audio on. It's entirely up to you. If you are going to put questions in the chat box, all I'd ask is if you make it short and sweet, because it's easy for us to read out. If it's a long one, just put your hand up. We've got one here from Agne. What role do artificial intelligence and sustainable fashion play in influencing new customers? Would anyone like to pick that up?
Yeah, artificial intelligence is quite broad, but I think if I could pick up on the sustainable element, I think particularly within fashion, sustainability is going to be huge. It's such a problem, I think, in fashion, particularly with a lot of fast fashion type trends we've had over the last sort of 5 or 6 years. There's a real spotlight on that. I think more and more consumers, I'd love to have some stats in front of me, but I don't. But more and more consumers are making sustainability part of their purchasing decision. I would say, as a retailer, if you don't have a sustainability page on your website, you should, and even if you're not doing as much as you want to do or everything you could do, just be transparent about what you are doing, because customers are reacting to that, and I think they are looking for that when they're looking for for brands to buy from. So sustainability, yeah, I think is huge, and I think that should definitely be a conversation within any fashion brand as to what they do and how they communicate that to customers through their website.
Nikki or Agne, do you want to respond to that talk? You don't have to, but if you want to, feel free.
No, I concur with everything that Michael said there. And again, it's about, even if you're on a journey, I think it's okay to say you're on a journey and to state where you want to get to, and this is where we are, because nobody expects it to happen overnight. So it's one, making sure that you state that intention, and ideally share kind of where you are up to in terms of that journey. And I think that's for all businesses, isn't it? That's not just for retailers and brands in terms of that, and we certainly know that our consumers are becoming more kind of aware. We see it kind of in the office environment, the one that I'm in today. We've had a number of graduates start recently within my team, when we had bottled water in the kind of fridge, and it's like, well, why are we doing that? Why are we collecting plastic bottles when we should be doing it through the tap, kind of thing? And it's the likes of me and us to kind of listen to those, be it our employees or our prospective customers.
Yeah, if I could just sorry Dale, but cool. if it's okay to give a little plug as well for Pimberly, because we actually did a sustainability podcast with Serena at Pimberly. I'm sure someone can post the link, but if any fashion retailers are looking for something to think about in terms of how they can start that journey of talking about that, that's quite a good resource which we can share.
Yeah, I'll post that link in the chat.
I'll come to you in a second, Agne. Just say, Angie, if you can hang fire on the returns things, we are going to get to that, promise you, towards the end of the session. Agne, do you want to come? I can see you nodding and smiling.
Yeah, I was actually going to pick up on the AI thing, AI question. So from kind of marketing perspective, especially, we're seeing a lot of kind of Google and Meta automations happening within campaigns, which is essentially kind of, I think, leveling out the playing field, and they kind of are taking a lot of control from marketing perspective into this black box of marketing, essentially, with a lot of these campaigns. But they can do some amazing things in terms of modeling and actually knowing who's more likely to convert based on the audience signals that you give these platforms. And there's a lot of automation in placements and kind of creative as well. They're starting to automate different creative. If you can just add in 15 visual assets and a bunch of different copy, they'll literally automate ads, including video for you. So there's some great tools now on Google Ads now as well within the creative library, where you can create video content very easily. So, which is amazing for marketing, because that's usually quite a kind of cost-effective way versus kind of an actual editor. So definitely explore those options.
Okay, thanks for that. And I just want to go back to them quickly. Sorry, we were talking about upselling a bit, and I'm not sure. I think you, Nikki, you mentioned it obviously after the checkout stage, the opportunity to upsell. But is there, and maybe I'm kind of looking at Michael on my screen with this question, but is there an optimal position is there an optimal upselling position in that journey? Do you know what I mean? Obviously, Agne mentioned, or I think Agne and Nikki both mentioned, not overload the checkout aspect of that journey, but is there an optimal thing? Is it always after the sale, or can it be during the search phase?
Yeah.
Or
I mean,
to everybody that.
Yeah, I think obviously the product page is probably quite important in that. So once someone is looking at a product, you have then an understanding of what they're looking for, which gives you the opportunity to say, well, have you thought about this? It might be a little bit more expensive, or have you thought about this to go with it? And you can have those, those kind of relational product setups, so you can recommend products that are similar price, similar color, whatever it might be. So I think at that stage is probably a good chance to try and increase the average order value, or to upsell something, so so they buy more expensive products. Personally, I don't like it to checkout. I think sometimes if there's a really nice product that has a synergy with what you bought, so if you're buying some shoes, for example, and you might show them a shoe cleaner or something to check out, that can work quite nicely. But I think to be trying to be swayed towards a completely different product once you got to the checkout, for me, that's not the right place to do it. And I don't think the journey ends at checkout. So I think it's actually after that purchase is sometimes the time to get people coming back and looking at other products you offer, or different products you offer that might be suitable for that customer.
Yeah, it's got to be complementary, hasn't it? And you can't bombard them. Otherwise, there's just too much noise, isn't there?
I say sometimes it can be useful, though. I mean, I often use a well-known gifting website, should we say, to buy cards and gifts, and sometimes I'm actually slightly frustrated that the upselling aspect isn't as good as it should be. You buy the card, then you have to you have to go to another page, find the gifts, and sometimes it can be a great asset at that stage. Sorry.
I think what we've found working really well, especially in the last couple of months for quite a few of the brands, is bundling, and how you use bundles to really upsell and kind of package it and make it easier for customers to just add those bundles. We've seen really big increase in average order value from that, and a conversion rate increase, like nearly 50%. So yeah, making it easy, especially for those kind of product areas where it is quite common for a gifting perspective. Bundling works very good, and there's some kind of plugins obviously that integrate quite well. That can be a quick win really for some brands.
An average order value is one of my favorite KPIs, because you've not got to generate any more traffic, you've not got to increase your conversion anymore. You've simply got to be smart about the complementary products that you present at the right point, be that product page or checkout, whatever, whilst they're in buying mode.
I suppose fashion does lend itself well to that sort of bundling thing, you know, and I suppose, like you say, it's doing a good service. It's equivalent of a good salesperson, I assume.
Would you like fries with that?
Pardon?
Would you like fries with that?
Indeed, yes. Pink or black fries.
Yeah.
Right, so Angie, out there listening, you'll be glad we're at the stage now. So, right, we've bought the product now. We want to talk about the after bit now. So I'm going to come to Nikki on this first. So returns, now there's a lot of stuff in the press and we're publishing a lot of content ourselves at Fashion Network. How are things changing here? Do you want to sort of kick this off, Nikki?
Yeah, I think there's some very interesting trends. And I've noticed there's also a question linked to this in chat around the trend towards charged returns. So, you know, again, you know, we know that the return rates are significantly higher for online than for kind of in stores. It's around 9% offline, and I've read as high as 40% kind of within fashion kind of online, which is a huge difference. And clearly there's a huge overhead there in terms of cost and resource in terms of managing that process. So, you know, we know there's that around the returns. There is, as was highlighted in the chat, kind of potentially more of a trend with some retailers charging for returns, potentially from a sustainability kind of perspective. And my view on that would be, providing that you are upfront with that. I guess it's something that's got to be tested, but upfront as to what your reasons are behind that change in trend, and that it's announced in a way that's available to your consumers rather than waiting to get to checkout. Then, you know, that I can see where that's kind of coming from. But yeah, so it's increasing, and it's also about how easy you facilitate your returns as well, what your returns policy is in that regard to make it easy. Interestingly, I was having a chat with a member of the team kind of before we came on the session, and she was saying that with one particular retailer, who clearly kind of I won't mention, that they made it so difficult for her to return an item that she'll never buy from them again. And again, it's also ensuring that the rationale for returns can't be kind of minimized in any way. So again, I come back to product information. You know, is your product as described? If you have sizings in a M, an L, and you know, an XL, kind of, I don't know, am I a small or am I a medium? You know, have you got kind of the sizing charts kind of aligned to that? So ensuring that you minimize returns as much as possible by ensuring that your product experience and your product information is as close to the real thing as possible. If then, you know, there are then going to be returns take place, that it's as seamless as possible. And if you're going to change your policy for whatever that reason might be, in terms of how you charge for those returns, that you're upfront and open about it in terms of why. But yeah, clearly a bit of a challenge at the moment in terms of online sales, and as online sales increase, probably will continue to be so.
What do you actually think about charging for returns, Nikki? Do you think, I mean, there's a couple of retailers recently announced they're doing it.
Exactly, and that's what I was saying. I think if you are as a buyer, you're coming at it from a sustainable perspective, and the website is providing as much information as it can to enable you to make the right purchase decision. I don't have a particular kind of issue. I can see, again, you know, if you think about the volumes of returns that must be taking place and what the impact that's having on the environment, I can see where that's coming from. But again, I just think it's early days, and I think it's got to be maybe a kind of a test and trial approach, perhaps.
Okay. I have heard the stats being somewhat higher than 50% in some parts of the fashion industry, yeah, but we shan't go into this in the forum. Couldn't possibly comment. Michael, what's your thoughts on the returns things at the moment?
I think it's difficult, really, because there's a big conflict, I think, with the returns between what consumers expect and what retailers want to do. So I think most consumers expect a nice, slick, transparent returns process, and for that to be clear and for them, be easy for them to follow. But I think for retailers, what you don't want to do is make it so easy for people to return things that you almost encourage it. So I think there's quite a fine line to walk there in terms of putting just enough friction in that returns process to put off people from just buying things and returning it without really giving it much thought. Whether you go as far as charging, I think that's a business choice. I think with my sustainability hat on, I do think I agree with it, because I feel that something needs to be done to reduce that, that burden. But there's lots of things you can do to make your returns process straightforward without making it completely unappealing and causing frustration. So one key thing maybe to pull out in that is actually including the return slip in your packaging. I was reading a stat the other day that 59% of consumers don't own a printer. So if you have to then print your return slip and things, that can in itself be really frustrating. So some simple things like that, just to make it nice and easy, but at the same time, don't make it so easy that you are just encouraging people to return things they buy from you.
My colleague has just made an interesting point in the chat. Some people argue that charging for returns can actually help some of the smaller brands and some of the smaller businesses that don't have capabilities to provide free returns. That's quite an interesting point. Okay, so we're at the returns journey. So we spoke a little bit of that. And also, guys, we're coming to the last quarter of the session. So if you've got any more questions or comments, please let us know. It'd be nice to hear a voice if anyone's brave enough to put their hand up. But my question to the panel, I might come to you for a second on this, is who's doing it well at the moment? Who's got a good customer journey that you'd like to say? It doesn't have to necessarily be in fashion, by the way, but yeah.
I think everyone will know a good example being ASOS. I think pretty much from marketing perspective, they got nailed in terms of having the different comms for different, I think, stages. So you'll see that they'll have kind of the more top level awareness activity that usually includes a new collection or kind of a lifestyle message that they'll put across. And then for kind of conversion aspect, they'll focus more hardcore sales and sale messaging. And obviously the overall kind of buying experience through them is very easy. And even though I think overall from kind of asset perspective, they have very high quality imagery, I think a bad example from kind of I think experience on site is probably, from my perspective, Zara. I would love them to really have a look at kind of user behavior on website and app. I think it seems like they need to maybe have a look at optimization, kind of the editorial look, and kind of maybe find an in-between kind of the two, because from usability perspective, I think it's not the greatest. And I think there's some kind of good, I think beauty brands are doing well. For example, Glossier, they kind of really imagery and how they position within the market, I think A, fits the demographic really well, and B, I think it really brings the products to life. They have very good use of UGC and reviews as well. So I think all that together has made something like makeup, which is difficult to buy online, especially if you haven't used it before, much more accessible, and the shopping experience is really nice. So yeah, those were my thoughts, I think.
I would, you'd stole my thunder, because I was also going to say ASOS. I think they've definitely nailed the checkout process. Just one simple step, you know.
Anyone else, Nikki, you want to mention is doing it well?
Well, I could mention a few Pimberly customers, couldn't I? So one of which is Furniture Box. So I really like what they've done in terms of both in terms of the website, quality of the product information, the product imagery that they're using, and also the journey kind of pre and post kind of checkout.
Michael, do you want to give a mention to anyone you think is doing it well? Or
yeah, I've always really liked Next, to be honest. I think Next do a really good job. They really kind of nailed that multi-channel thing where everything is very well integrated, where I can buy online, I can pick up in store, I can buy from store, return online. So that whole end-to-end journey seems really seamless with Next, which I've always quite liked. And I don't find them too intrusive with some of the after-marketing as well, which I think some brands can be a bit guilty of, kind of emailing you every 10 minutes from the moment you purchase something to try and get you to purchase something else. I think theirs is quite timed and subtle, which I quite like as well. So I think they're doing quite a good job of that.
Okay, there was one question here we didn't answer from Abigail. It was just relating back to the returns question. And Natalie, I believe you've got your hands up. I'll come to you in a second. What's the best method to communicate changes in the returns process? Does anybody want to pick that up quickly?
Whichever is the most upfront. If it needs to be when you first do it, if it is a major change, upfront enough to be on your website, on your homepage. Don't leave any surprises. Don't wait for your customer to get to the end stage to realise that you've changed it.
Yeah, I think maybe something quite targeted as well. So it's actually in the order confirmation email, because there'll be a lot of people who won't care your returns process has changed because they might not know what it was in the first place. But I think if someone's just ordered, that's maybe a good time to let them know that if they do want to return it, this is now the process, and just provide a link to it there.
Yeah.
Okay. Natalie, you've taken your hand down now. If you do want to speak, just pop your hand up again and we'll just pop you live. But yeah, so we've got one live question here. I think Scarlett, you might need to switch her on because I don't have the control. So there we go. Yes, Natalie, I think you should be live.
Switch me on. Good afternoon, everybody. My daughter and I were just listening on the way home. That's why I've not been able to put my hand up, because we were in the car anyway. It was with regards to the discussion of things being returned. She mentioned ASOS as really bad, not for returning, for the customer, once they got to the checkout. So for whatever reason, she didn't elaborate. I am wondering, mine's more of an observation, why it's taken so long, because back in the 90s, there was quite a lot of that, people ordering things, multiple orders, and then sending stuff back, and also, just wearing it once and then sending it back, So I really do think that this is right to be, bringing in these fees, about time, I will say.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Marks and Spencer's, it used to be notorious, wasn't it? And it was almost like renowned that people would go to Marks's, buy something, wear it, and then take it back because their returns policy was so open.
Relaxed, yeah. Well, I'm glad to see. I'm glad to see it.
And also it proves, if your daughter has a different view of ASOS, it also proves that actually a little bit of this is personal as well,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Natalie.
No problem. Thanks for putting me on.
No problem at all. Thank you very much. Right, so we are basically into our last stretch now. So I've got a question for all three of you, really. So do you want to just, are there some things that you, some top tips, should we like, takeaway tips? One thing you want people to remember from today's webinar, if you could just impart them with one thing, what would that be? And I'll come to you, Agne, first on that.
I think it's important to remember that there are a lot of different personas and people with different needs and triggers. So it's very important to kind of break down the main three or four for your business, and kind of keep that in consideration when putting together kind of your strategy. So you're not just putting together like a blanket strategy for everyone. Everyone has different needs, and different messaging and creative will work differently for each one. So I think that's quite important.
Michael.
Yeah, I would just say to remember that although it's one journey, there's actually 5 different stages to it. And I think it can be quite a useful exercise for merchants just to break that down, do it on a whiteboard, whatever it might be, write those 5 stages and just look at what you're doing within each stage and look at whether any of those areas need improvement. But breaking that down and give yourself that kind of strategy of how to approach improving that journey would be my top tip.
Thank you very much. And Nikki, you can have the last word.
Yeah, no, mine would be give your product information some love and care. It's the heart of what you do. It's the heart of your business. And consider what its role is at each stage of your buyer journey. I really like, Michael, how you outlined kind of the buyer stages and across your channels to ensure it's the best it can be. Help it find a home.
Thank you very much. We're just in time as well, so it gives me time to sort of thank all our panelists, but also thank you, the audience. If you look in chat, there is a little bit of a link to our post-event networking. We're going to be having a little bit of a debrief for myself, our panelists, and obviously my colleagues, the colleagues from Ecommerce Club, and obviously I'm sure some of the colleagues from our 2 sponsors will be in there as well. So if you want to come and join us quickly and you can have a quick chit chat, it will be just a normal sort of Zoom meeting. So if you want to pop in, great. If you can put your camera on, that'd be great. But we probably will ask you to introduce yourself. You don't have to put your camera on, but it'd be good if we can hear you. Okay, guys. Well, thank you very much. And I shall see you shortly in the Zoom meeting. Thank you.
Yeah.